A federal judge has just blocked a key part of President Trump's immigration agenda, marking a significant legal challenge for the administration. On August 29, 2025, a Washington, D.C. court halted a policy meant to speed up deportations for undocumented immigrants living anywhere in the U.S. This decision has sent ripples through the political landscape. This plan was central to the administration's promise of a massive deportation operation, which they argued was necessary for national security. U.S. District Judge Cobb found the government's plan likely violated the Constitution, creating a major legal obstacle for the administration. Her ruling emphasized the importance of due process. The expedited removal process allows immigration officers to deport certain individuals quickly, without a full hearing. This process has been controversial since its inception. The Trump administration wanted to use this tool nationwide, not just near the border, sparking immediate legal challenges from various advocacy groups and legal experts. Judge Cobb emphasized that everyone in the U.S., regardless of status, is protected by constitutional rights. Her ruling underscores the principle that legal protections apply universally. Her decision temporarily halts the expansion, offering relief to thousands who might have been affected. This ruling has been seen as a victory by immigrant rights groups. The administration is expected to appeal, but for now the court insists that speed cannot override fairness and due process. This ongoing legal battle will likely shape the future of U.S. immigration policy. This essay will break down what the policy was, why the judge blocked it, and what it means for the future of immigration enforcement. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this critical issue. To understand the recent court ruling, it's important to first know what expedited removal actually means and how it works in the U.S. immigration system. Expedited removal is a fast-track deportation process that was created in the 1990s, designed for people caught right after crossing the border illegally, often within hours or days of arrival. Instead of going through a lengthy court process with a judge, a single immigration officer has the authority to decide the person's fate, making the process much quicker. Traditionally, expedited removal was limited to people apprehended within 100 miles of a U.S. border, and only if they couldn't prove they'd been in the country for more than 14 days. If both of those conditions were met, an officer could issue a deportation order on the spot, with almost no opportunity for the person to appeal or challenge the decision. The key feature of expedited removal is that there's no day in court, no judge, no hearing, and no chance to present evidence. In standard deportation cases, immigrants have the right to hearings, to present evidence, and to appeal decisions. Expedited removal strips away those protections. Because the process is so swift and offers so few legal protections, its use has always been controversial and hotly debated among lawmakers, advocates, and the public. Human rights advocates warn that expedited removal risks deporting people who may actually be eligible for asylum, or even lawful residents who simply can't immediately prove their status or provide documentation. That's why, until recently, the government mostly used expedited removal at the border, where facts are clearer and the process is easier to justify. The Trump administration's expansion changed all that, applying expedited removal far beyond its original intent and allowing it to be used deeper inside the country. This dramatic shift in policy is at the heart of the current legal battle, raising new questions about fairness, due process, and the limits of government power in immigration enforcement. In January 2025, the Trump administration made a dramatic and controversial move by expanding expedited removal, a process that allows for the rapid deportation of certain undocumented immigrants without a court hearing. The Department of Homeland Security announced that this expansion would apply nationwide, not just within the traditional 100-mile border zone. This meant that the policy would now reach into every corner of the United States, affecting communities far from the border. Under the new rule, anyone unable to prove 2 years of continuous presence in the U.S. could be targeted for expedited removal, no longer just recent arrivals, but also people who had been living in the country for months or even years. This sweeping change put millions of people at risk of deportation without the chance to see a judge, including those with steady jobs, children in school, and deep roots in their neighborhoods. Many had built lives and contributed to their communities for years. The administration argued that this expansion was necessary to clear the massive backlog overwhelming immigration courts, which were struggling to keep up with a flood of cases. It was also framed as a way to fulfill a major campaign promise to deport 1 million people per year, a goal that energized the president's base and became a rallying cry at political events. But this change marked a fundamental shift in immigration enforcement, moving the focus away from just border security to targeting people who had become established members of American society. Now, the only thing that mattered was immigration status, and whether someone could immediately prove 2 years of residency, often a difficult task, especially for those without official paperwork. Critics argued that this policy ignored the human cost, tearing families apart and disregarding the complex realities of people's lives in the U.S. Many advocacy groups warned of devastating consequences for communities. The expansion sparked immediate legal challenges from advocacy organizations, who filed lawsuits and held press conferences to draw attention to the issue. The new rule blurred the line between recent arrivals and long-term residents, raising serious constitutional questions about due process and equal protection under the law. The legal fight quickly escalated and landed in federal court, where judges were asked to weigh in on the constitutionality of the administration's actions. Judge Cobb's ruling would soon put the brakes on this sweeping change, setting the stage for a high-stakes legal battle over the future of immigration enforcement in America. The legal challenge landed before Judge Cobb, who focused on due process, a core American legal principle. She found the administration's policy failed to provide fair procedures for people with established lives in the U.S. The ruling distinguished between recent border crossers and those living in the country for months or years. For the latter, deportation means family separation and loss of home, stakes too high for a rushed process. Judge Cobb criticized the policy's skimpy procedures, which put the entire burden of proof on the individual at the moment of arrest. If someone couldn't immediately prove 2 years' presence, they could be deported within days. She warned this created a high risk of wrongful deportations. Ultimately, Cobb ruled that efficiency cannot override constitutional rights. She issued a preliminary injunction, blocking the policy while the case proceeds. The administration's request to pause her order was denied, so the block took effect immediately. The message: the government must provide a fair hearing before removing people with deep ties to the U.S. One of the most striking parts of Judge Cobb's ruling was her rejection of the government's legal argument. The Trump administration claimed undocumented immigrants weren't entitled to due process under the Fifth Amendment, but the Constitution says no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process, and courts have long held this applies to everyone in the U.S., not just citizens. Judge Cobb called the government's position truly startling and warned it would endanger everyone's rights if accepted. If the government could ignore due process for one group, it could do so for others. Her ruling reaffirmed that the executive branch's power over immigration is not absolute. The simple accusation of being in the country unlawfully isn't enough to strip someone of their rights. This principle goes beyond immigration. It's a foundational protection for all people in the U.S. Judge Cobb's decision is a reminder that constitutional safeguards apply to everyone, even in contentious policy debates. The lawsuit wasn't just about legal theory, it was about real people. Advocacy groups showed that ICE officers were using aggressive tactics, including arrests inside or outside courthouses. Immigrants attending court as required could be rearrested and placed into expedited removal, erasing any progress in their cases. This punished people for participating in the legal process and created fear in immigrant communities. Some became afraid to attend hearings, risking deportation in absentia. Judge Cobb saw these examples as proof that the policy prioritized speed over fairness. A single officer's snap judgment could override years of legal proceedings. The court's intervention was urgently needed to protect due process rights. Immigrant advocacy groups like Make the Road New York and the ACLU led the legal challenge. They argued the Department of Homeland Security was overstepping its authority by expanding expedited removal far beyond what Congress intended. The lawsuit highlighted that many targeted by the policy had deep roots in the U.S., families, jobs, and community ties. Deporting them without a hearing would devastate families and harm communities. The groups also showed it was nearly impossible for someone suddenly arrested to gather proof of 2 years' residency. Many with valid asylum claims were too scared or confused to express their fears to arresting officers. only a full hearing before a judge could ensure these life-or-death claims were heard. Comparing the old and new expedited removal rules shows just how much the policy expanded. The old system applied only within 100 miles of a border and to those in the U.S. less than 14 days. It was a border enforcement tool for recent arrivals with minimal ties to the country. The new rule eliminated the geographic limit. Now, anyone anywhere in the U.S. could be targeted. The time frame expanded from 14 days to 2 years, sweeping in people with jobs, homes, and families. This transformed a narrow border policy into a nationwide tool affecting millions. Any interaction with law enforcement could trigger fast-track deportation. The change shifted the focus from recent arrivals to established residents. The risk of wrongful deportation increased dramatically. Judge Cobb's ruling restored the original, more limited scope. Judge Cobb's decision immediately protects millions of undocumented immigrants from fast-track deportation. The ruling restores the right to a court hearing for those arrested in the interior of the U.S. for the Trump administration. It's a major setback, forcing reliance on the slower immigration court system. The government will appeal, but must now defend its policy in higher courts. For the public, this case is a civics lesson. Courts can check executive power, even on hot-button issues. The ruling reinforces that constitutional rights apply to all people on U.S. soil. The legal fight over immigration enforcement and presidential power is far from over. For now, fairness and due process remain at the heart of the system.